Okay. Hey, welcome to the first episode of the Crypto OG show. Excited to be here with an OG that I know well, Mike Evron, who I know from hosting Crypto Mondays. Welcome to the OG show, Mike.
Thanks, Luke. Thanks for having me.
So the idea of the show is really simple. Obviously, the OGs have been around for a while, so they've seen a lot. They've got great perspective, great context, and every OG has a story about how they got into crypto to begin with. And obviously your story is one of the few that I've talked to that actually predates Bitcoin. So kind of, why don't you talk about kind of how you first started kind of getting into the kind of digital currency world?
It goes back to my founding the farmers market, which was in fact the world's first dark web marketplace. Everybody thinks it's Silk Road, which is good for me because Ross Ulbricht is doing double life and I ended up doing 5 years. But that's partly because of the obscurity of the thing. But yeah, when we started out, there was no Bitcoin, there was no crypto, anything. We were using digital gold currency. We were using eGold and 1MDC and then Pecunix, and I was always doing research on how to move money and looking at all kinds of things. I remember even Ripple before there was Bitcoin, and yeah, just kind of it was sort of natural for me to stumble across Bitcoin. I didn't really think much of it, but thank God I did, because now I'm sort of semi-retired rather than scrounging for.
So why don't you talk about the launch of Farmers Market?
So I mean, that was a labor of love. I mean, I quit a very, very high-paying job to do this because I felt it needed to be done, and I have this horrible habit of responding to the name someone. Somebody has to do something. Oh God, here we go. So, and in this particular case, I happened to be the right someone because I had the skills, I had the anonymity. I'd never had a speeding ticket before. Like I was not anybody's database, anybody's radar, anything like that. And I had the skills to do this top to bottom, and so I did. But before Tor was quite ready, when Tor was like too slow for words, I built a system around Hushmail, sort of convoluted system, but it worked.
What year are we talking about?
This is like 03 or 04. And then once Tor got to be good enough, we moved it to Tor, and I built that whole thing. I built, in fact, a what I think is a really good framework for like really quickly building applications, but it's way out of date now. I'm surprised nobody else has done anything similar. So, but there it is.
And what did you sell over? How did people hear about you?
Word of mouth. I mean, I'm guessing people are still sending emails to those addresses. It's been 8 years since you could get anything there, but like those original addresses, once word gets out, people hear about it. People ask, and you have to sort of vet them a little bit and then let them on. So.
And so you started. It didn't start as a dark web, right? It started.
Yeah, right. Started out as this sort of convoluted email form thing, where like I would make these. So I had a program which at the time there was just one vendor, so he could keep track of his inventory and sort of generate these forms which we could email to people. People could then fill out those forms. The results would turn into an email that went back to him, and so he knew what to send, where to send it, and that he'd been paid and all this crap. It was really convoluted. But once we went to Tor, it was just like just like your average kind of store, storefront. And there were multiple vendors by that point. And
what year was that you went to Tor?
Probably 09 or something like that. Yeah, that neighborhood.
And so what, kind of what was the volume and what was it that people were buying and selling?
So first of all, one of the other sort of contrasts with Ulbricht is that no hard drugs, no weapons, none of that crap, no assassination markets. It was medicinal only. It was cannabis and it was psychedelics, and it was, you know, mostly high grade. I wrestled a bit with, like, you know, do I let in the sort of like mid-tier stuff, because it's not really great medicinally, but I realized it's better than nothing. And people that couldn't afford the good stuff. Hold on 1 second. Yeah, I'm being left a message. What was I saying? I hope this gets edited out. No, I totally lost the thread. I'm sorry. Yeah. There were those few products. You know, just like really high end stuff, sativas, indicas, what have you. Some sort of like very cheap outdoorsy stuff. Still very few seeds for those that couldn't afford the good stuff, and psychedelics. And what was the other question? Volume. Volume varied quite a bit. So we would have like really, really good times, and then some mail would get intercepted, and then like nothing. Yeah, in the final analysis, we were selling people their meds. So, you know, we had a few people that like would eat. You know, we would try to eat some of the losses. I ended up selling insurance. You know, if you paid like an extra 20%, you'd get a resend if the thing got intercepted or just didn't reach you. You know, so we had issues like that. Yeah, so that's, you know.
And so when did you move outside? Decide that you wanted to move outside and do this outside the U.S.?
That was in 2006, and it had nothing to do with the business. The business had already been running for quite some time. But actually, I guess I decided to leave in 2004 after that election. Right. I mean, if the American public was actually willing to go out there and vote for this war criminal, you know, I just couldn't see myself living in this country anymore. And so I started taking steps. It took us till 2006 to actually move. It's harder than you imagine, just like picking up and moving to a foreign country. But yeah, so that was the real impetus. And initially we moved to Costa Rica, which is beautiful. But and I would recommend it to anybody who feels they can live in the country, because the countryside there is absolutely gorgeous. But you know, my wife and I were city folk. So a couple of years of that small town living, and we were ready to like lose our shit. So we had intended, in fact, to move to Europe. So we just did this one sort of tour of South America before leaving. We fell in love with Buenos Aires, so we moved there, and that's where I lived. That's where we lived when I got arrested. I didn't get arrested there, though. I got arrested in Bogota, Colombia, which has nothing, again, to do with the business. I was just there visiting friends. So.
And so obviously the feds were tracking you and tracked you down to Bogota.
Yeah. I mean, once they knew who I was, essentially, I guess they were just waiting for me to leave Argentina, because apparently extradition there is kind of complicated. Colombia is pretty much the 51st state when it comes to, like, there's a DEA building in Bogota with something like 600 agents in it, you know, so that they operate there as freely as they do in the States, and they want to get somebody out of there. It's not a problem. So they were just waiting for me to go anywhere. Go to the States, go anywhere where extradition is simpler. Yeah, so when they found out I was going to Bogota, that's where they got me.
So how did it go down?
So actually, we were on our way back. We'd flown from Cartagena to Bogota. We were about to change planes, and we were running late. We were barely going to catch that plane. And like about 15 of them just like sort of descended on us and just like asked me for, ID, and every form of ID I could buy. Is this all the ID you have? Yes, this is all the ID I have. Are you sure? Yes. You know, you give them credit cards and like, yes, this is everything I own in the world that has my name on it, unless you want to see my underwear. Yeah, and then they were like, okay, you're under arrest, yada, 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 and I was like, oh shit. So
That must have been terrifying.
it was utterly terrifying. Yes, I was really, like, I'd never been in prison before. As I mentioned, I never had a speeding ticket before, so I had no idea what to expect, especially in Colombia. Yeah, it was utterly terrifying. But
yeah, so obviously they took you and they put you in jail in Bogota.
in Bogota, yeah.
How long were you there for?
Only like 3 days, but
and then you flew to.
So turns out they are not allowed to like when they sort of repatriate you or whatever, they're not allowed to change planes in the US, right? So it had to be wherever they could get a direct flight, wherever they could get the soonest direct flight. My case is out of LA, so that's where I needed to be, but there wasn't a direct flight to LA. It was either going to be Houston or Miami, and it was Miami. So I was stuck in the federal holding facility in Miami for about 6 weeks, waiting for a plane that would take me to Oklahoma City, where I would then await a plane that would take me to LA. That was no fun. So once here, I was in this horrible county jail for a while until they finally moved me to the federal holding facility here in LA, which is terrible, but within the bounds of, like it's designed to hold people for a couple of weeks until they get bail, and for that purpose, it's fine. People end up there for years. Most people end up there for years and years and years, and for that, it's absolutely not fine. And that's where I basically waited. It took about 1.5 years for me to get bail. If you ever get arrested and you think you're entitled to bail, think again. Bail is optional, Eighth Amendment notwithstanding. So
You were 1.5 years before you were able to get bail.
Yep. So I knew a couple of people. There's this one guy who went by the nickname Brand New. He'd been there for 6 years waiting for his speedy trial. And I knew this one Mexican guy who'd been waiting there for 7 years for his speedy trial. In this the facility, which clearly is really nicely designed for being there for maybe a week or two, waiting for trial, bail, whatever. But that's what they have, and that's what they use. So.
And so then what happened when you were out on bail?
When I was out on bail, I was locked down. I was, I basically exchanged one prison for another. I had this GPS anklet, and I couldn't leave the house. I could leave the house to go to services, to go to doctors, that kind of thing. Eventually, they loosened it, so I had like 12 hours of, more or less free time. But yeah, I wasn't doing much. I was, I wasn't allowed online at all, in fact. But thankfully, one of my neighbors had open Wi-Fi, so I could sort of keep up with what was going on. I guess Ethereum was coming out. Or people were talking about it, working on it, that kind of thing. Bitcoin had gone to like 500 or 600 or something like that, I think, 2015. Yeah, that's when I was out on bail. And so that made me mildly happy because the DEA had my laptop on which my Bitcoins were stored.
I'm sorry, you did or they did?
They did.
Oh, so your Bitcoin were on...
were on the laptop that they were holding as evidence, yeah. In fact, I had to sue them for it. Like they wouldn't, it's a long and terrible story, but I had to actually hire another lawyer who, to work on contingency to get my laptop back from the DEA, and it took him months, but he got it back. So.
That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously there are aren't very many lawyers who have an expertise in this kind of case. Did you get the same lawyer that other folks had gotten?
Well, I was in prison, so my wife basically just Googled around for, I guess, crypto lawyer or something like this, and she found a couple of firms, and only one of them, or yeah, only one of them, which she felt was competent, was willing to work for, or was willing to work on contingency, and so we hired them. So yeah, and they got it done.
Did you plead guilty or not? You know, and plea, or did you plead not guilty?
Eventually, I pled guilty. Like this is another public service announcement. If the feds arrest you, it doesn't matter if you did it or you did not do it. You want a deal. That's it. Like do not go to court against them. Do not go to trial ever. It is really the most serious crime you can commit in the federal system. So yeah, so I did plead guilty, and everybody should. So,
And so what were you? How long were you sentenced to?
63 months, which is 5 years, 3 months. 85% of that you actually do, unless you really hurt somebody. And plus 5 years of supervised release, which I'm dealing with now. So.
And so, what prison did you get put into?
Oh, eventually I ended up in South Jersey in Fort Dix, which is in the middle of an Army base, in the middle of, I guess we're maybe at the edge of the Pine Barrens. There's like nothing there. But it's a huge facility. There's like 4,000 men there or something like that. So, nice big library, some facilities. I mean, it's prison. It sucks, but as these things go, it could have been worse, I guess. So certainly compared to what Ross Ulbricht is going through, it was a piece of cake. So,
what did you spend your time doing?
Reading, teaching people to read. This is one sort of like a lemonade thing. Had I not gotten arrested, I never would have had the experience of watching a grown man, like a 50-year-old man, read his first word. So that was a really powerful experience. I had a few powerful experiences in there, but most of the day I would like read, do crossword puzzles, do Sudoku puzzles. I think I did like every New York Times crossword puzzle for like years, from whichever, like in the 90s to whenever, and God knows how many Sudoku puzzles I did. And I gave myself a serious education.
Did you build? So what superpowers did you build during the time?
I can do one-handed push-ups. I've worked out a lot too. I did not look like this a year ago when I got out of prison, let me tell you. And this lockdown isn't helping. But what other superpowers did I? I can make wine out of Concord grape juice and an apple. What else? I have I gave myself an education in anthropology and linguistics and like anything I could find, math.
Did you have other guys who were teaching you, like you were teaching other guys?
Yes. Fortunately, unfortunately, I don't know. There were some fairly prominent scientists in there with me. In fact, the guy that designed the robotic arm for the ISS was in there with me. He's a great scientist, and in fact, an excellent example of why you should never go to trial. He was offered like a 6-month sentence, but he really, he was innocent. He felt like he had to go to court, whatever. He got 25 years. So, yeah, horrible. And there was a mathematician there, and another physicist. A lot of, America does tend to lock up its best and its brightest. So yeah. And they do have the system where you, I guess, like, inmates teach inmates. You get like these, of course, convoluted process. You have to design a course, and put it, have it approved, et cetera, et cetera. I put together a course on, and of course, you're not allowed to teach anything computer related, right? So what am I going to teach? I put together a course on how to structure data for for computer systems. I sat down with a couple of guys who'd been through this before, and like we sat down and found the most inoffensive way to say, like, here's how to represent business data in a database, kind of thing. And that's my legacy over at Fort Dix. That course remains on the curriculum. Yay!
Making the world a better place. So you get out. When did you get out?
In August of 18. Yeah, August of 18. That's when I got out of Halfway House. I was in Halfway House and Watch, which was also very interesting, from April to August of 18. And then in August, I actually came home. And then a week later, I went to Crypto Monday on that Labor Day. And it was me and Valentin, who you also know, and that was it. And so we, like, he was new in town, and I was new in town, and he didn't have a job, and I didn't have a job, and we were just like, we can turn this into something. And we kind of sort of did. It was, it's kind of fizzling, right? Well, it was sort of starting to fizzle. Now, of course, it's a freaking, disaster, like meetup.
Yeah.
But hopefully it'll pick up again. But yeah, it's a great hang. It really, like, we go, we drink, we talk crypto and conspiracy theories, and you name it.
Where is it held in Los Angeles? I've been there, so I know, but for folks.
Right, for the audience. So it's on the promenade in Santa Monica, this place called 1212. It's a huge place. They have this awesome happy hour. It's kind of custom tailored for us, because it's every Monday night. It goes from 5 till 10, 11, whenever they close down. And it's it's a beautiful spot. It's a couple of blocks from the beach. So what I often do is I like walk down early and just like walk on the beach a little bit, and then go to Crypto Mondays. It's very
sounds pretty sweet. So and outside of Crypto Mondays, what are you working on today? What excites you in the crypto sphere?
So lately, so this is the problem with crypto, is your mind keeps getting blown over and over again, and I'm not as young as I used to be, and I think even if I was young, I wouldn't be able to keep up with everything that blows my mind in crypto. So it's really always like, what's the latest thing? And for me, the latest thing is Coda, the Coda protocol. Apparently, I got a thing last night. I think they just started their new test net, and it's an amazing. I'm sorry.
Coda protocol. CODA.
CODA. Yeah, it's was it Coda.io or something like that. And basically what it is it's recursive ZK snarks, right? That in itself is a mouthful, and conceptually it's a couple of brainfuls, right? But basically what it allows them to do is maintain a constant size blockchain, a fairly small one, regardless of the number of transactions, regardless of the size of transactions. Right, how they do that exactly, I'm not really sure, but I am in touch with a couple of people over there on Discord, and we try to do a one of these things with one of those guys for what do you call it? Crypto ZTV, crypto.
Yeah, so this is called Crypto ZTV, Z for Zoom. Although we don't need to use Zoom, but at the beginning we're using Zoom, and everybody's using Zoom to start. Although I think you mentioned that you're going to try another platform to do Crypto Mondays next week on.
Yeah, Jitsi. It's very promising. It's open source. It's limitless. It's the simplest thing I've ever seen. It's really like you put in a URL, you send the URL to people. They put that in their browser, and it's done. The question is going to be able to handle the kind of loads that. Well, I mean, almost definitely be able to handle the kind of loads that CryptoMondays L.A. will throw at it, because they'll be like, I mean, I can see it going to 20 people, maybe, but some of the bigger meetups, yours and Pedro's in Puerto Rico, I'm not sure I can handle that kind of volume. one way to find out, right? So,
Yeah. Well, you got to get a VR headset. You said, did you order one? So
yes, I ordered one, but now we're back to the 90s where you actually have to wait for stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I'm used to like, oh, I ordered it on Amazon, I just click the thing, and and there's the guy. But now it takes a while. It's you know, life in the time of coronavirus. It's
Yeah. It's
yeah,
unfortunate.
I'll have it next
Yeah.
week. Yeah, looking
Cool.
forward to it. Mhm.
And as you know, we're doing Crypto Mondays in New York in VR. Now it's obviously global. And actually in the VR space, there's a globe that everybody's represented on. So you can see everybody in the room where they are from around the world. And
Oh, cool.
there are people from from all over the place. It was super interesting to see.
Yeah, that'll be fascinating. Very much looking forward to it. And yeah, I guess technologies like that. Oh God, like I said, and I think in IM to you at some point, like this is another rabbit hole I really don't want to fall into, so, because I could easily see it. It's a fascinating technology. It's really sort of timely, depending on what happens to society after this whole coronavirus thing. Like, does this thing actually go away? Is it done, or are we, are things changing permanently? Are people really going to be spending a lot more time at home? In which case, VR suddenly becomes a huge thing. Yeah, oh God, of course, provisioning things for VR, both software and hardware, can be a huge business, etc. So, but yes, I'm very much looking forward to trying it out. It's one of those things that I've been meaning to try out forever. And, well,
Yeah, I think it's a thing, and I think who knows, obviously, what society is going to look like in the future. But I think for this period of time, I think it's going to just dramatically accelerate the adoption of VR, because it really, this is interesting, but having the VR headset on, it's just, that much more immersive, just that much closer to real life than this. And particularly now, when we're kind of actually starved for more.
Like if you're like if we're in VR together, do I see you as you? Do I like actually see your face?
We use AltSpace is the software we use. It's kind of the one that's predominantly used from what I've seen in the different VR events that are going around. And weirdly, the number of emoji choices are extraordinarily limited. So other than having hair, less hair, or more hair, or it's in there male and female, but a lot of people look like a lot of everybody looks like a bunch of other people in any large room. So it's not perfect yet, but I assume that'll get better. It'll be interesting to see what Jitsi does. And even we've now done 2 Crypto Mondays, and even between the first and the second, there were a number of things that got better. In the first one, we actually had a lot of trolls that came disrupted because these are public, and so they can go, people can see, and these are probably 16, 18, 20-year-old kids or something and don't have anything better to do. By the second one, they had the tools, so they were quickly able to kick those folks out. And also, as opposed to this, which is really 1 to or 2 or panel to many, that's much more interactive, that people can go and and you can have meetings obviously in Zoom where everybody talks, but you get 100 people, and that's a little bit of a clusterfuck. But in VR, you can go to different spaces and have conversations with 2 or 3 or 4 people outside of the main conversation or other conversations that are going on. And I'm sure that Zoom and other platforms will adopt that pretty quickly as well. But I think today it's just
what seems to me is that's missing is I guess just the facial expressions. This is really why you do video calls. It's like you get that additional channel, which is very, very powerful, right? Now you don't, so you get in VR, I guess you can sort of go to a separate room or what have you, but with this, at least you get that additional thing. So I don't know. It's got to be possible to integrate, right? It's probably, the math is probably mind-numbing. We need probably a couple more generations of CPUs, GPUs, but once that happens,
By the way, you can take the VR experience and port it to Zoom, and you can port Zoom into the VR experience. So the show's a half hour, so we can end up, if anybody in the audience has any questions, you can put it into the chat of Mike about his experiences at Farmers Market, Crypto Mondays, what he's doing now in Coda Protocol. I think you also said you are last time I talked to you, you were excited about Avalanche.
Yes, Avalanche is the thing that responsible for my previous blow up, brain explosion before Coda. Yeah, that's just fantastic. But it's not as exciting as it used to be, because nowadays there's a number of really good protocols, consensus protocols that also have speed and reliability and all this crap. So Avalanche is great, but I think so it's impossible to keep track of all this. I think Cardano just came out with Ouroboros 2, which probably is significantly faster, and everybody's. I guess once Satoshi let the cat out of the bag that it is possible to have trustless consensus, that cat just ran amok, and there's all these great consensus mechanisms now. And Avalanche certainly is exemplary because it's so simple and easy to understand. But yeah, so that was mind blowing. I hope it finds some use. In fact, I'm hoping that Tezos takes it on, because I know one of the first implementations was done in OCaml specifically to be integratable into Tezos, and I don't know, I think there's a community proposal or something out there to adopt it, and I hope they do. So, yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, any last things you want to say, that you're working on, that you're seeing, the wisdom that you want to share before we sign off?
Well, so yes, there's. I'm not sure if it's real or not. The Chinese curse about me, you live in interesting times, but man, are we cursed? Like these are, there's real upheaval going on here with this coronavirus thing, because it really has served to widen a lot of the cracks that were already there in our system. And things may well crumble, and best way out of that mess, I really think, is crypto, is trustless consensus, smart contracts, DAOs, things like that. That's how we're going to be able to move forward. It's a lot more resilient, a lot more robust than the centralized systems we have in place, and I think we can come out of this stronger.
Okay, cool. Well, I couldn't agree with you more. Well said. Last question. We got a question from the audience before we leave. Somebody, Sky, asked, you wanted to know your opinions on NFTs.
NFTs, part of me says it's a solution looking for a problem, but it really isn't. What it is an imperfect solution to a fairly clear problem, which is being able to identify things. This is one of those places where the Oracle issue really comes into play. So with 721s, you have like the crypto kitties, you have the collector's items that are the tokens themselves, and that's fine. But to find more utility, they're going to have to correspond to something in the real world. And by the way, 721 is awful. Everybody who's doing any kind of NFTs should move to 1155, because it's much more flexible, and it's much more efficient. But if we find a way to prove that this NFT corresponds to this physical thing, right? And there's not a lot of things we know how to do that for. We can do that with diamonds, for example. So if you take a diamond and you shine a laser through it, the pattern of the laser will be unique to that diamond, right? So you can capture that on film or on a cell phone or what have you, and you can hash that picture, throw that on the blockchain. You have this unique thing. You now know that this NFT corresponds to this diamond. But there aren't a lot of things of which that's true, So so there have to be, I guess to come back to the thing, there'll be a lot more useful once the Oracle problem is more thoroughly solved. That's another thing that I'm working on conceptually, is the Oracle problem. Once that gets solved, and it's actually many problems. So so there's like, you need distributed oracles, you need direct oracles, you need things like that. But once we have that set of tools there, I think NFTs will be a really, really big part of the economy. So
interesting. Well, cool. Well, thanks for that, Mike. Thanks for everybody for coming. This will be online, as I told you, I think in about 24 hours.
Awesome.
Post it online.
All right. Take care. All right. Bye.